Hey, thank you for taking the time to click on today's video. Today I wanted to explore with you what I consider to be the second biggest mistake that investors are making, and that investors continue to make most of their investing life. What is that second biggest mistake? Well, we're going to be exploring that on today's video. Now, when we think about the different various stages of life that we go through, we need to realize what our objective, what our outcome is, and why we're actually saving money, why we're investing. And we need to identify what that is. What is your objective? Is your objective simply growth, just to grow the money? Well, if that is the case, that's fine. But my question is, when is enough growth enough growth? Is your objective to be able to retire at a particular age? Maybe you want to retire at 62. Maybe you want to retire at 67. Maybe your goal is to work until you're 70 and then you want to be able to retire then. What is the objective for saving this money? Is it predominantly to be able to pass on as a legacy to your children? Is it perhaps something that you want to be able to compound and accumulate and save so that when you get to retirement age and you're in the distribution stage of your life, you can then begin to start drawing those dollars back out in the form of income to yourself so that you can have supplemental income. You can pair that with your Social Security. Maybe you have a pension, maybe you have some rental income. These things are so very important to identify before you invest. Now, if you're like so many of the other individuals that I've met, maybe you've been investing and you've never considered what your objective is. But today's challenge is to make certain that you do that. Now, moving on, what is this second biggest mistake that I see people doing? Well, the second biggest mistake that I see is a lack of diversification. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, Matthew, I'm already diversified. You know what? I've got 13 different mutual funds. I'm totally diversified. But hold the phone. We want to explore what true diversification is. And there is going to be some things that I think will be helpful to you. The first is this. We need to consider the fact that the nucleus of this program is most definitely going to be you. And when we talk about you, we're talking about your goals. We're talking about your objectives. We're talking about your risk tolerance, your family, your spouse's needs and longevity, and all of these things can fall into play when we consider you. As a fiduciary, investing is really secondary to my relationship with my client. I am first and foremost interested in my client, what their life is like, what they want their life to be like, what they're planning on doing, what they like to do when they retire, because that right there is the catalyst to help us determine how and what we actually invest in. So if you're the nucleus, what are some of the areas that we need to be very concerned to be very specific on? Well, the first is going to be the world of insured investments. Now, when I talk about insured investments, I want to be very careful to explain. When your financial advisor, your broker is telling you that you're conservatively invested, I want to abolish that word conservative and I want to replace that with insured. What are insured investments? Insured investments are going to be investments that are going to be in the bank. We know that the bank is going to be insuring our money through the FDIC. These could also be bank products. They could be, say, CDs. They could be money market funds. Insured could also represent the government. When we buy government treasuries, it could be I-bonds, it could be a 30-day treasury, it could be a 30-year bond, it could be a 10-year treasury or a 2-year treasury. Those things are all backed by the full faith and credit of the government. The third is going to be insurance companies. And so we need to understand that insurance companies are in the business of insuring money. These things are going to be annuities. And of course, the world of annuities is very broad. We can have fixed interest annuities. We can have indexed annuities. But those annuities are going to be insuring your principal so that when you deposit money into that annuity, you know that that principal will always be there plus interest that you're going to get paid. Now, there's another purpose for having insured money. The purpose of having insured money is not just so that it's safe. The purpose of having insured money is so that you know that it's going to be complementing the other two areas of your investment world. So these things are insured, and we need to make certain that regardless of really how old we are, whether we're 30 years of age or we're 60 or we're 90, we have a part of our money absolutely insured. Now, we're going to have a second area, and that second area is going to be that of income, or rather fixed income. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, if we think about what we talked about a little bit earlier, where what is your objective of investing? What are you trying to accomplish? Well, we know that down the road, when you retire and you make that transitional step and stage change from the accumulation stage where you're young and you're trying to save for retirement and you're pumping money into that 401k or that 403b. You're doing that specifically for the reason likely to get income down the road. But the problem is that so many people have been trained to think, well, if the 401k was the best thing to get me to retirement, the 401k is going to be the best thing to get me through retirement. And the reality is that's not true. You see, when you're sitting in a growth-based investment like mutual funds, like index funds, those things are designed for growth. Those things are not designed for income. And in fact, the number one reason why so many people, when they get to retirement age and they get closer to that stage where they actually pull the trigger and they retire, the reason that they pull their money from a 401k, a 403b, a 457 plan, and they roll that into an IRA is because those employer plans do not allow for efficient money transfer to the retiree. In other words, every single dollar that you pull out is likely to be taxed 30%. That means you only get 70 cents on the dollar. So we want to be able to make certain that if we have an objective, if we've been saving this money for retirement specifically for the purpose of supplementing our income, we need to be thinking about having a portion of our money diversified into instruments, things that are going to be more contractual in nature and things that are going to create income. What do I mean by that? Well, if we think about a rental home, if we think about a piece of real estate like a farm, individuals that own rentals, individuals that own farms that are older, they're going to take those properties and they're going to turn them into income producing tools. They're going to rent out that rental home and they're going to get rent. They're going to rent out that farm. Someone's going to work that farm and provide them rent. That's rental income. However, we can do the exact same thing with our money without having to deal with tenants, lease agreements, contracts. What do we have to do? We have to look outside of Wall Street and we have to look more towards the fixed income market. Well, what are these things? These things are going to be individual bonds. Now you may be thinking, but I've already got bond funds. Okay, but pay attention, because you see, a bond fund is not the same thing as an actual individual bond that you may own. So you see, the very definition of a bond mutual fund is owning stock of the company that owns the bonds. You don't own the bonds. So I want my clients, if they need income, if they want greater safety, and they want more of an output of income, I want them to actually own the bond. I want them to own things like preferreds. You see, these are fixed income instruments, and they have essentially two guarantees. And of course, it's always subject to the risk of default. But when we own the bond, we know two things. We know, number one, that bond is going to pay us a steady stream of interest. And number two, we know that if we hold that bond to maturity, when that bond matures, it's going to pay us back all of that par value. We're going to be made whole. And so we want to have a portion of our money that is focused on you, that is producing income for you. This is going to be safe. This is going to be the rainy day money. This is the money that you're going to grab when you want to, buy the new car. You want to be able to put shingles on the roof, or maybe, a window in the house, or take a vacation. This is typically going to be safe money that you can access. This is going to be money that's generating income for you every single month through interest and dividends. Now, why is that so important? Because you can spend interest, you can spend dividends, and it doesn't affect your principal. This is true income production. So what is this third key area? Well, I bet you're already ahead of me. You're probably already figuring out. And that third key area is going to be most everybody's favorite word. It's going to be the word growth. Now, this is an area that we know is important to us. But you know what? As we converge through life, we get closer to retirement, the size of these circles circles is going to be dependent on one thing. Not me, not your salesman, not your broker. It's going to be dependent upon you. You see, when we get older, we can't afford as much risk as what we could when we were younger. So when we're young, this could be a much bigger circle than this circle over here. When we're really, really old and we really don't have any reason to be taking on any risk, this circle over here could be huge and these two circles here could be smaller. But the non-negotiable with me as a fiduciary is that I want every single one of these things focused appropriately and suitably for my client, you. And more importantly, no matter if we're dealing with insured investments, no matter if we're dealing with income generating investments, no matter if we're dealing with growth investments, every single one of these areas is producing interest and or dividends for you. And why is that? Because when we invest and our principal that we've worked so hard to save is now invested appropriately and it's creating interest, it's creating dividends for you. Listen, it helps you in three areas. Area number one is if you need income, you got income because all three of these are going to be producing income you can spend. Number two, every one of these things that is producing interest or dividends, it's helping you to be able to reduce your risk. You see, things that create income through interest and dividends are less risky than things that don't. And number three, interest and dividends helps you compound your returns. Very quickly, we have two stocks. It's possible that both of those stocks could go up by 8%, right? But what if one of those stocks, well, guess what? They paid you a 4% dividend on top of that. You see, this is what so many successful investors have gleaned and noticed and observed and put into application in their own life. And this is what I want for you. Remember, these three key areas are non-negotiables for you because if they're not aligned around you, if they're simply you're investing here and there simply because your broker, your financial advisor, or the person that you work with has a great degree of salesmanship and they're convincing you to buy products, but they're not objectively focusing on what your goals are and then aligning what you're investing around or in to accomplish that, it's a no-go. It's a bad deal. Go back and think about your allocations. Work with someone who knows how to be able to create true safety, someone who knows how to create true income, and someone who knows how to be able to compound your returns when it comes to growth. Well, I hope this video has been helpful. And as always, I encourage you, give us a thumbs up if you like the video. If you want to be notified every time we have these videos, hit the little subscribe button and that little bell and we'll notify you each time we have a video that pops up, and share this with your friends. So hopefully this has been helpful, and remember, it's always up to you to make today a great day. I'm Matthew Johnson. Thank you so much for watching.